Imagine strapping yourself into a cockpit where your helmet alone costs $400,000 and can see through the floor of your aircraft. You're piloting a machine that shares battlefield data with every friendly unit in a 600-mile radius while simultaneously tracking 23 targets and preparing to fire weapons you'll never see with your naked eye. This is the reality of the F-35 Lightning II, one of the most advanced fighter jets in existence today. But why exactly does it cost $80 million per aircraft? And more importantly, what's it actually like to sit in that cockpit and merge with one of the most advanced weapons systems ever built? Stay with me because we're about to pull back the curtain on the most sophisticated fighter jet ever created. Let's start with something that sounds impossible. When F-35 pilots look down, they don't see the floor of their cockpit. They see straight through the aircraft to the ground below. The Gen 3 helmet-mounted display system does something no previous fighter helmet has ever done. It turns the pilot's head into a weapon system and a god's eye view all at once. 6 infrared cameras mounted around the aircraft feed a 360-degree view directly into the helmet's visor. When a pilot looks left, the display shows what's to the left of the aircraft. Look down between your feet and you see the terrain passing beneath you as if the jet's body has vanished. This distributed aperture system means there are no blind spots. None. Every angle is covered, every threat visible, every piece of airspace monitored in real time. But here's where it gets wild. That helmet doesn't just show you what's around the aircraft. It projects critical flight data, targeting information, and threat warnings directly onto the visor. Airspeed, altitude, weapon status, enemy positions, navigation cues, everything a pilot needs appears as augmented reality overlays in their field of vision. The pilot never has to look down at instruments, ever. Their eyes stay on the mission while the helmet feeds them everything they need to know. Each helmet is custom fitted to its pilot's head using a 3D scan. The optics are calibrated to that specific pilot's eyes, accounting for interpupillary distance and ensuring the display aligns perfectly with their vision. This customization is why each helmet costs more than a luxury sports car. But when you're traveling at Mach 1.6 and making split-second combat decisions, having information perfectly aligned with your natural line of sight isn't a luxury, it's survival. The helmet weighs about 5 pounds, which doesn't sound like much until you're pulling 9 Gs, and that weight multiplies ninefold against your neck. Pilots train extensively to handle this load, building neck strength specifically to manage high G maneuvers while wearing this technological marvel. And here's something most people don't know. The helmet's night vision is so good that pilots can operate in complete darkness without traditional night vision goggles. The sensors see in infrared, and that feed goes straight to the visor. Now, you might wonder what happens if the helmet fails mid-flight. The F-35 has backup systems, but losing the helmet display is considered a mission-critical failure. That single piece of equipment is so integral to how the F-35 operates that without it, the pilot loses the primary interface with the aircraft's sensor fusion. They can still fly and fight, but they've just lost their biggest advantage. Walk up to an F-35 cockpit and you'll notice something strange. There aren't hundreds of switches, dials, and buttons like in older fighters. The F-35 has a panoramic touchscreen display that dominates the instrument panel, a massive 8 by 20 inch screen that would look at home in a luxury car, except this one is managing a weapons platform traveling faster than sound. Previous generation fighters like the F-16 have more than 300 switches in the cockpit. The F-35 has around 30. Everything else is controlled through that touchscreen and a handful of essential tactile controls. This simplification wasn't about making things easier. It was about making information management possible at supersonic speeds. The screen displays whatever the pilot needs at that moment. Flying to a target, navigation and terrain data fill the display. Engaging enemy aircraft, the screen shifts to threat tracking and weapons employment. Managing fuel and systems, one touch brings up aircraft health monitoring. The jet knows what phase of flight you're in and anticipates what information you'll need. But touchscreens in a fighter jet present a problem. When you're pulling high G maneuvers, your hand weighs several times its normal weight and precision becomes difficult. The F-35 solution is smart. The most critical combat functions, weapons release, sensor management, and defensive countermeasures are controlled by hands-on throttle and stick, or HOTAS. The pilot's hands never leave the throttle and stick during combat. The touchscreen handles the non-time critical stuff like communication settings and system configuration. That throttle and stick are loaded with controls. More than 20 functions functions are accessible without moving your hands from these two positions. You can select weapons, lock targets, activate sensors, deploy countermeasures, and adjust radar modes, all while keeping your hands exactly where they need to be during a dogfight. The design philosophy is simple. In combat, every millisecond counts, and reaching for a switch somewhere else in the cockpit could mean the difference between winning and dying. The seat itself is reclined at 30 degrees, more than most fighters. This isn't for comfort. It's to help pilots withstand higher G-forces. When the seat is reclined, blood doesn't drain from the brain as quickly during high G turns. Pilots wear G-suits that inflate and squeeze their legs and abdomen during maneuvers, but the reclined seat gives them an extra edge in maintaining consciousness during aggressive flying. And speaking of the seat, it's also the ejection seat. If things go catastrophically wrong, the pilot pulls a handle between their legs and a rocket motor fires them and the seat clear of the aircraft. The F-35's ejection system can safely extract a pilot from sea level all the way up to 50,000 feet at speeds from 0 to 600 knots. The system has weight sensors and adjusts the ejection force based on the pilot's size. Lighter pilots get less force, heavier pilots get more. Nobody wants a cracked spine from their own ejection seat. Here's where the F-35 becomes something completely different from any fighter that came before it. The jet doesn't just have sensors, it has sensor fusion, and that changes everything about air combat. Traditional fighters have radar, targeting pods, electronic warfare systems, and communication equipment, all operating as separate systems. The pilot has to mentally piece together information from multiple sources and build a picture of what's happening around them. The F-35 does this automatically. Every sensor feeds data into a central computer that fuses everything into a single, coherent tactical picture. The AN/APG-81 AESA radar can track dozens of targets simultaneously, while also jamming enemy radar and mapping ground targets. At the same time, the electro-optical targeting system is scanning for infrared signatures. The distributed aperture system is watching in all directions. The electronic warfare suite is listening to enemy radio and radar emissions. And the data link is pulling in information from other F-35s, AWACS aircraft, ground stations, and even satellites. All of this data, hundreds of tracks, thousands of data points per second, gets processed and presented to the pilot as simple, prioritized symbology on their helmet display. Threats appear as color-coded icons. The most dangerous threats show up in red. Friendlies are blue. Unknown contacts are yellow. The pilot doesn't have to interpret raw radar returns or calculate threat ranges manually. The jet does it and presents only what matters. This fusion extends to weapons employment. When a pilot selects a weapon, the system automatically determines which targets are within range, what the probability of kill is for each, and the best firing solution. The pilot makes the final decision, but the jet handles the complex calculations that would take a human several critical seconds. The data link system allows multiple F-35s to operate as a network team. If one jet's radar picks up a threat, every F-35 in the formation sees it instantly. If one pilot identifies a target, all the others can engage it without ever turning on their own radar. This is called cooperative engagement, and it means that F-35s hunting together are exponentially more effective than the sum of their parts. But sensor fusion has a dark side that pilots have to manage. The jet can present so much information that pilots can suffer from information overload. The computer filters and prioritizes, but in a complex battle space with dozens of aircraft, multiple threats, and evolving mission objectives, the helmet display can get crowded fast. Pilots train extensively on managing this cognitive load, learning what information to focus on and what to filter out mentally. The F-35 carries its weapons internally in 2 weapons bays to maintain its stealth profile. Opening those bays obviously compromises stealth temporarily, but the jet is designed to stay outside the engagement range of most enemy systems. It can fire an AIM-12 AMR AAM from 100 miles away, destroy the target, and be gone before the enemy even knows what happened. The weapons bays can carry a mix of air-to-air missiles and precision guided bombs, with external hardpoints available when stealth isn't required and maximum payload is. One more thing about sensor fusion: it makes every F-35 pilot an information node in a larger battle network. The jet isn't just collecting data for itself, it's sharing that data with every friendly asset. An F-35 pilot might spot a threat 200 miles away and relay that information to a Navy destroyer, which then engages that target with a surface-to-air missile. The pilot becomes a quarterback, calling plays for the entire team. The F-35 flight control system is completely fly-by-wire, meaning there's no direct mechanical connection between the stick and the control surfaces. When the pilot moves the stick, sensors detect that movement and send electronic signals to flight computers, which then command the control surfaces to move. The jet has 4 flight computers working simultaneously, and they vote on every control input. If one computer disagrees with the other 3, it gets overruled. This system allows the flight computers to prevent pilots from accidentally exceeding the aircraft's structural limits. You can pull back on the stick as hard as you want, but the computer won't let you overstress the airframe. It also means the F-35 can be inherently unstable in ways that make it more maneuverable. The computers keep it under control while allowing aggressive flying that would be impossible with manual controls. The jet has a combat radius of about 670 miles without refueling and a top speed of Mach 1.6, though it can achieve supersonic speeds without using afterburner, a capability called supercruise that most fighters don't have. This fuel efficiency and speed mean the F-35 can respond to threats quickly and stay on station longer than many older aircraft. The Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine produces 43,000 pounds of thrust with afterburner, making it one of the most powerful fighter engines ever built. That massive power plant sits behind the pilot, and when full afterburner kicks in, the acceleration pins you back in your seat with serious force. The engine also powers all the aircraft's electrical systems, generating enough electricity to power a small neighborhood while simultaneously pushing the jet through the sky at near supersonic speeds. Fuel management is critical on any fighter, but the F-35 has some tricks older jets don't. The fuel system automatically balances fuel between tanks to maintain the aircraft's center of gravity as fuel burns off. The pilot can monitor fuel status on the main display, but the jet handles the actual management. This frees up mental bandwidth for more important tasks, like not getting shot down. Pilots describe flying the F-35 as less about stick and rudder skills and more about managing systems and information. The jet is incredibly forgiving aerodynamically. It won't let you stall it accidentally. It protects itself from pilot error in ways previous generations didn't. This allows pilots to focus on the tactical picture rather than fighting to keep the aircraft airborne. Of course, skilled pilots can still outfly less experienced ones, but the baseline competency required is different. The jet handles a lot of the basic flying while the pilot makes combat decisions. The aircraft can pull 9 Gs in a sustained turn, which is the limit of what a human body can withstand even with a G suit. The computers won't let you exceed this because doing so would cause you to lose consciousness. Some older fighters could theoretically pull harder, but their pilots would black out before reaching the aircraft's structural limits. The F-35 finds that perfect balance where the airframe and the pilot max out at the same time. Landing the F-35 presents its own challenges. The aircraft has a relatively high approach speed compared to trainers, and the single engine means there's no backup if something goes wrong on final approach. The F-35B variant, used by the Marines, can land vertically like a helicopter, but the conventional F-35A that the Air Force flies needs a runway just like any other jet. The landing gear is robust enough to handle carrier operations for the Navy's F-35C variant, which means it's overbuilt for regular runway landings, adding weight but ensuring durability. Maintenance crews need specialized training too. The aircraft's stealth coating requires careful handling, and the software requires regular updates to maintain its edge. Each F-35 has more than 8 million lines of code running its systems, more than a dozen F-22s combined. When something breaks, Diagnosing it involves plugging into the aircraft's computer and reading fault codes like you would with a car, except infinitely more complex. The maintenance computers track every flight hour, every maneuver, every system activation. They predict failures before they happen based on usage patterns and component life. This predictive maintenance approach means fewer surprise breakdowns and better mission readiness rates. Training to fly the F-35 takes about 2 years from start to finish. Assuming you're already a qualified military pilot, you'll spend months in simulators before ever touching the real aircraft. Those simulators are so realistic that pilots say the first time they fly the actual jet, it feels almost identical to the sim. The simulator can recreate any combat scenario, any weather condition, any emergency, allowing pilots to train for situations that would be too dangerous or expensive to practice in real life. So there you have it. The F-35 represents a fundamental shift in what it means to be a fighter pilot. You're not just flying an aircraft, you're operating a network node, managing a sensor fusion platform, and employing weapon systems while the jet handles much of the actual flying. The helmet sees everything, the cockpit simplifies everything, and the sensors fuse everything into a picture that gives you an overwhelming advantage over anyone who doesn't have this technology. And that's why this $80 million jet is considered worth every penny by those who fly it. What's your take on fighter jets evolving into flying computers? Does the technology enhance the pilot or replace their skills? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more such deep dives into cutting-edge technology. We'll see you in the next one.